I think one of the hardest phases to be in when we look at something like an aesthetic goal is a maintenance phase. Get in, losers, we're going lifting. So maintenance refers to being able to maintain your current body weight. So you're not in a calorie deficit. We're not trying to lose anything. You're not in a surplus where we're specifically trying to, add calories to build size. You're just kind of cruising. And this can be really challenging for people because if you have done something like a fat loss phase or you have done something like, a surplus, not a whole lot always changes here. You're not going to see the number on the scale going down. You're not necessarily going to see some of your lifts increasing in significant ways if you're eating more food. You're just kind of like coasting. And it's not to say that changes won't happen. There have been many times I've been in maintenance, and just based on the program design that I follow, I absolutely do hit PRs. And there have been times, and I see this with clients, where, you are a newbie and we're trying to establish your maintenance calories and you are losing fat. Your body is changing. But a lot of times when this isn't like your first rodeo, when you're at maintenance, we're just trying to maintain. And if you're that kind of person who's just like, I don't know if it's enough, like where are the variables changing, you're probably not going to see a tremendous amount. And I know for me, that was something I just had to kind of like get on board with. And it's taken time. Maintenance, I remember when I initially started working with Hillary, and she was like, we just need to figure out what your maintenance is. And I was like, bitch, I want fat loss. Like, let's get into a calorie deficit now. And she was like, that's not how it works. We need to establish what this number is, because once we start to go into the cut, the goal isn't just, eat as little as possible. It's we want to eat as much as we possibly can without anything changing, so that when we do start to gradually cut away calories, you feel good in the process. We see results, but we're not taking you to a point that you don't need to be at. And I think for people who are just like me in that case, where it's like, but I want to do the thing. This is part of the thing. This is part of the thing. A lot of people tend to get very excited in the beginning. It's like, I'm going to go lose fat. Let's slash 500 calories. I got this. And it's like, babe, if that is the energy you're going into it with week one, and we need to do this for, let's call it 12 weeks, it'll probably be here this first week, maybe even the second week. But, week 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it's really easy to lose steam when we do things very quick. And we need to establish what that maintenance is so we know, well, how much are we cutting? And if you're somebody who's been, a chronic dieter, I like to say chronic dieter as I'm trying to rub the crumbs off of my body. If you're somebody who's been a chronic dieter, and you really want to go into a fat loss phase, but your maintenance calories are so low that if you were to cut your calories, it's like, there's not a whole lot I get to eat. Like, then you might end up needing to do a reverse diet to increase your maintenance calories before the fat loss phase is actually going to work for you. And getting to maintenance, it's a process. It's a process if you are in the beginning, getting ready to go into fat loss. It's a process if you are at a point where it's like, I want to get ready to do a bulk, but again, we need to figure out what is your baseline. And when you come out of the fat loss phase and you go into a reverse diet, like, we need to figure out what are these new maintenance calories. Everything is always evolving. And I don't think people fully understand that all the time. I had a peer recently reach out to me. She's like, wow, your body looks so different. What are you doing? And I told her, I've been tracking my macros. I've been working with this dietitian for X amount of time in conjunction with how I program my workouts for strength, for building muscle, for, yada, yada, yada. And she was like, okay, I'm going to hire the dietitian too. And I was like, okay, I give her the link, and she was like, there's like a 6-month commitment. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, I'm not going to need her for 6 months. And I was like, what do you think you're signing up for? Like, she's not just going to give you macros. She's not just going to tell you, this is what's going to happen over the course of X amount of time, because you don't know. Life is happening to people. Things are going to change. Variables are going to change. And if you think I just need somebody to give me the numbers and I got this, it doesn't work that way. And it's the same thing with strength training. And, I know when it comes to talking about a lot of the aesthetic stuff, it keeps coming back to nutrition. Nutrition plays a really big role, but so does lifting. So does your exercise selection, the amount of volume you're getting, how everything is organized. I mean, being in maintenance mode is different than how I necessarily program for myself if I am in that fat loss phase. And I just want to make it really clear that if you are looking for aesthetic changes, it's not just the food. Like, the program design has to match up as well. It's not one or the other, it's both. And for the most part, like, maintenance is not the most exciting time in aesthetic changes. It's not even the most exciting time if there's necessarily a performance goal. You're just kind of like coasting, and that's cool. And I think sometimes we get really excited over, what's the next thing I have to do? But there's something very peaceful about just coasting, especially if there's a lot going on. And it's just like, man, can something be streamlined? When you get to maintenance mode, that's kind of what it is. But, depending on your goals, depending on how everything is structured, depending on timelines and, how dedicated you are, getting there, staying there might be longer than the other person. But being in maintenance is a thing where you're going to spend more time than necessarily being in the other phases. A fat loss phase is not going to last more than, I'm like saying 5 months because I did my last cut and we went for about 20 weeks, but most people, it's going to end around like 4-ish months. When you go for too long, it's not a phase, it turns into a lifestyle. But that's not going to last that long. A surplus is definitely something, it could be longer. The phase that I went into was about 6 months. It doesn't have to be 6 months. I mean, you're not necessarily doing this damage the same way it is when we are taking this food away. But maintenance is one of those things where it's like, I could be here and just live here. I mean, me personally, one of my goals is to get so freaking good at tracking maintenance calories that if I do want to hang out and coast, I can do it without needing to track my food, because I just know. I've developed the skill set to know, oh, that amount of chicken on my plate, that's, 4 ounces. That amount of pasta that I just pulled for dinner, that is, exactly 60 grams. It's like, there's something powerful in knowing, oh, this is how you do it. So you then can do one less thing, be it tracking your food. So the way I think of it, it's kind of like learning how to master maintenance. It's kind of like learning how to master peace. There's not a lot going on, and that is the beauty of being in a maintenance phase. And it's the peace that is required before you potentially go into that cut or you go into that surplus, because we need that baseline evidence. So if you're here, if you're wondering, what happens when I get there, that's kind of what happens. It's the pause that makes the next move possible. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. Make sure to give us a follow so you never miss an episode.